You're standing in formation at Cannae in 216 BCE, a Roman legionary in the center of the line, and you can already see what's about to happen. The Carthaginian infantry ahead of you is giving ground, exactly as they're supposed to, and your entire legion is pushing forward into the bulge, compressing tighter with every step. Your centurion is screaming to maintain formation, but the men around you are crushed so close you can barely lift your gladius. The African heavy infantry on the flanks hasn't moved yet. They're just watching. You know what's coming next, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Here's what actually determined effectiveness in ancient warfare. Not individual bravery, not superior weapons, not even tactical doctrine, but something far more brutal. The willingness of a military system to treat human beings as expendable components in a machine designed to produce specific combat outcomes. The question isn't who was more courageous or skilled. It's who built a more efficient system for converting human bodies into military results. And the answer is going to disturb you because it reveals how effectiveness in warfare has almost nothing to do with the qualities we celebrate and everything to do with the qualities we'd rather not examine. Let's start with what you think you know. Greek hoplites fought in the phalanx, a dense formation of heavily armored spearmen that dominated Mediterranean warfare for centuries. 8 to 16 ranks deep, bronze armor, 7-foot spears, overlapping shields creating a wall of bronze and ash wood. The front rank did the killing, the rear ranks provided weight and pressure, shoving the formation forward through sheer mass. It looked invincible. It won battles for Athens, Sparta, Thebes. It's the formation that held at Marathon and Thermopylae. Roman legionaries fought in manipular formation, smaller, flexible units that could adapt to terrain and respond to changing battlefield conditions. Lighter armor, shorter swords designed for close stabbing, javelins thrown before contact. The formation everyone celebrates as revolutionary, the tactical innovation that conquered the Mediterranean world. But here's what those textbook descriptions leave out. You're a Greek hoplite from a middle-class farming family. You bought your own armor, 70 pounds of bronze that cost you the equivalent of a year's agricultural income. You trained in the gymnasium with other property-owning citizens a few times a month. When war came, you left your farm, grabbed your equipment, and joined the levy for the campaign season. You fought alongside men you'd known your entire life, your neighbors, your cousins, the man who sold you grain at market. The phalanx wasn't just a military formation. It was your community, physically manifested in bronze and violence. When the formation broke, when men started running, you weren't just abandoning a tactical position. You were abandoning everyone you knew. That social pressure, that shame-based cohesion, kept Greek hoplites locked in formation even when tactics demanded flexibility. Now you're a Roman legionary. You didn't buy your equipment, the state issued it. You didn't train occasionally, you drilled constantly under professional supervision. You don't fight alongside your neighbors, you fight with men assigned to your century, many of whom you'd never met before recruitment. Your centurion isn't someone you elected. He's a professional soldier who earned his position through demonstrated ability to keep men fighting when everything in their bodies screams to run. You don't serve for a single campaign season. You serve for 16 years minimum, often 25. The Legion isn't your community, it's your entire life. This is where effectiveness really gets decided. At the Battle of Cynoscephaly in 197 BCE, Greek and Roman systems met directly. The Macedonian phalanx, the most refined version of Greek infantry tactics, faced Roman legions in terrain that was broken and hilly, exactly the kind of ground where phalanx formations struggle. The Macedonian right wing won their section of the battlefield decisively, driving Roman troops back. But the Macedonian formation couldn't adapt quickly. While the victorious wing was still reorganized, Roman maniples on the other flank had broken the Macedonian left, then wheeled to attack the rear of the still advancing Macedonian right. The battle was over in minutes. 8,000 Macedonians dead, 700 Romans. The Romans didn't win because of superior courage or better weapons. They won because their system was designed to treat soldiers as interchangeable parts that could be repositioned, replaced, and redirected without depending on social cohesion or community bonds. A Roman tribune could order maniples to disengage, wheel, and attack in a new direction because those men had been trained to follow commands from authority figures they might have met 3 months ago. Greek hoplites couldn't do that. Their effectiveness depended on fighting alongside men they trusted personally, which made them devastating in frontal combat and nearly helpless when battles required rapid tactical adjustment. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. That Roman flexibility came at a cost that's erased from the triumphant histories. You're a Roman recruit in a training camp, 18 years old, taken from a rural village in Italy. The first month is beatings. Not punishment beatings, training beatings. Your centurion and optio systematically break down every social bond, every personal identity, every instinct toward independent decision-making. You learn to obey reflexively without thought because thinking gets you hit. You learn that your opinions don't matter, your comfort doesn't matter, your life doesn't matter except as it serves unit effectiveness. You watch men fail training. Some are sent home, some disappear, you don't ask what happened to them. By month 3, you've stopped thinking of yourself as an individual, you're a legionary, that's your identity now. Your century is your family, not because you love them, but because you've been conditioned to function as part of that unit or experience crippling psychological distress. When your centurion orders you to hold position while cavalry charges, you hold position because the neural pathways for disobedience have been systematically destroyed. This isn't courage. It's psychological conditioning so thorough that dying feels more acceptable than failing to follow orders. The Greeks never built this system because they couldn't. Their military depended on citizen soldiers who maintained independent identities, owned property, had families and farms to return to. You couldn't psychologically break a hoplite the way Rome broke its legionaries, because that hoplite was still embedded in civilian society, still had an identity outside of military service. Greek effectiveness depended on preserving the humanity and social connections of soldiers. Roman effectiveness depended on destroying them. Look at the casualty ratios. At Pydna in 168 BCE, the final battle between Rome and Macedon, 20,000 Macedonians died. Roman casualties numbered fewer than 100. That's not a battle, that's systematic slaughter. The Macedonian phalanx fought exactly as it was designed to: dense formation, overlapping shields, coordinated advance. But when the formation fragmented on rough ground, the soldiers couldn't adapt. They were citizen militia trained to fight as a unit. When the unit broke, they became individuals in heavy armor being hunted by professional soldiers trained to kill efficiently in broken terrain. The Romans pursued for hours, cutting down men who didn't know how to fight outside their formation. The Roman system produced superior battlefield results through superior brutality, not toward enemies, but toward its own soldiers. Roman training manuals that survive describe conditioning techniques that modern military psychologists recognize as systematic trauma induction, designed to override normal human responses to danger. Sleep deprivation, random punishment, forced marches designed to produce physical collapse followed by immediate combat drills. The goal wasn't teaching skills. It was breaking personalities and rebuilding them around military obedience. Here's the evidence that makes this undeniable. Greek casualty rates in victorious battles averaged 5 to 10% of the engaged force. Roman casualty rates in victorious battles averaged 3 to 5%. That's not because Romans were safer. It's because Roman formations were designed to maximize enemy casualties while treating Roman casualties as acceptable operational costs. If a manipular formation was failing, the centurion could order it to hold position and die while other units maneuvered for advantage. Greek commanders couldn't do that because the hoplites would simply leave. They were citizens with property rights and social standing. Romans were soldiers, property themselves, not property owners. The manipular system's tactical flexibility came from treating humans as disposable tactical assets. You're a Roman legionary ordered to hold a river crossing against a Celtic warband. You know you're going to die. Your century can't stop 3,000 warriors. But you hold position anyway because 4 centuries behind you are positioning for a flanking attack that will only work if the Celts commit to crossing where you're defending. You die, your century dies, the flanking attack succeeds. Rome wins, your name might be recorded on a monument, probably not. You're remembered as a number in casualty statistics if you're remembered at all. Greek hoplites wouldn't accept those orders. Not because they were cowards, but because they maintained enough individual agency to recognize suicide missions and refuse them. Roman discipline meant legionaries had been psychologically conditioned to accept death as a legitimate operational requirement. Modern military historians celebrate this as superior morale. It was actually successful dehumanization. The uncomfortable truth is that both systems were effective because both systems successfully exploited human psychology for military purposes. Greeks did it through social pressure and shame-based cohesion. Romans did it through systematic psychological destruction and reconstruction. Neither system treated soldiers as fully human. The difference is that the Greek system preserved enough humanity that soldiers could return to civilian life and reintegrate into society. Roman veterans couldn't. If you're asking who was more effective on the battlefield, the answer is Rome. If you're asking who built a sustainable system that preserved human dignity while maintaining military effectiveness, the answer is neither of them, because that's not how ancient warfare worked. Effectiveness meant finding better ways to convert human beings into tactical advantages, and both Greeks and Romans excelled at it using different methods. The Greek method produced citizen soldiers who remained human. The Roman method produced tactical machines that used to be human. The 50,000-man Roman army that conquered Gaul, that subdued Germania, that held the Rhine and Danube frontiers, those weren't heroes. They were victims of a system that had discovered you could make men more militarily effective by systematically destroying their capacity for independent moral judgment. Julius Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic War read like a tactical masterpiece. Read them again knowing that every maneuver he describes required men who had been conditioned to die on command, and suddenly the text becomes a catalog of efficient human exploitation. At Alesia, Caesar's legions built 11 miles of fortifications while surrounded by a Gallic relief army. They held against simultaneous attacks from inside and outside the siege lines. 60,000 legionaries held off 250,000 Gauls. Every military history celebrates this as genius, but you're one of those legionaries. You haven't slept in 3 days. You've been repairing fortifications under constant arrow fire. You're down to quarter rations because supplies can't get through. Your century has lost 40% of its strength. You hold position anyway because psychological conditioning is more powerful than starvation or exhaustion. When the battle finally comes, you fight for 18 hours straight because stopping means death, and your conditioning won't allow you to process that option consciously. The Greeks couldn't have done that, not because they lacked courage, but because they retained enough humanity to recognize impossible situations and withdraw. Roman effectiveness came from eliminating that survival instinct and replacing it with conditioned obedience so thorough that death became preferable to disobedience. This is what effectiveness actually means in military history. Not valor, not skill, not superior equipment or tactics. The ruthless efficiency with which a civilization can convert human beings into tactical resources and deploy them without concern for their psychological or physical well-being. Rome won because it was willing to do things to its own soldiers that Greek society found morally unacceptable. That's the answer. Not the one in textbooks, not the one that makes us comfortable, but the one supported by casualty statistics, training manuals, and the simple fact that Roman veterans couldn't function in civilian society. The definitive truth is that comparing Roman and Greek soldiers is comparing two different philosophies of human exploitation. Greeks maintained enough humanity in their soldiers to preserve democratic society, but sacrificed tactical flexibility. Romans achieved tactical dominance by systematically destroying the humanity of their soldiers until they became incapable of anything except military service. Neither system was moral. Neither system preserved human dignity. One was just more ruthlessly effective at winning battles, by treating soldiers as expendable components in a military machine. If you've made it this far through this investigation into what military effectiveness actually requires, hit that subscribe button on Mythbusting, because we're going to keep examining the uncomfortable mechanisms behind historical outcomes that traditional narratives prefer to celebrate without analysis. The machinery of military power has always depended on finding socially acceptable ways to dehumanize the people operating it, and understanding that reality is more important than preserving comfortable myths about ancient valor. Drop a comment below. What other military matchup should we analyze by looking at what actually made armies effective rather than just celebrating their victories?